Shalom, brothers and sisters. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to look at the word pro or pros. A lot of times you've seen some people maybe suggest that the Messiah existed with God, that he was somehow a co-creator or he's co-eternal, that he was with God in the beginning. And they get this idea, this concept from John 1:1. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and Elohim was the Word." And then they tie in verse 14, "and the Word became flesh." So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this word pro or pros. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim. So the question becomes, was the Word with Elohim, as in next to, together? Was Messiah and Elohim together? They're up there together, and he's like, "Here, hand me the tool to make the dust maker. I'm going to create some dust so that we can now make man." He's the firstborn of creation, right? So all these concepts and ideas that come to us through our beloved brothers and sisters from the Roman Catholic Church and other sister churches and Protestants and stuff. And the issue is we're looking at this from a Greco-Roman Western concept, and we're not even really looking at this word pros. This one word changes so much in our understanding with the word being with Elohim. The word "with" in Greek, there's several different words actually that can be used, but you think of "with," there's meta, means like together with, and then there's also para, which means like parallel, next to, the sides, and then we have this word pros, which is what is used in John 1:1. And the word pros, it means towards, it means in the direction of, and it can mean before. But it's not necessarily before in how we understand it from before in time, like a linear path before in time. It can mean that, but it mostly has to do with before in preference. Like, for example, if I say I prefer steak before fish, I'm preferring steak over or before I would indulge in fish. And so it's not a sequence of time, it's a preference of something else. So many read this in the English and they start up these weird pre-existing Old Testament angel of the Lord doctrines, and we just don't need them when we understand what this means. So when we understand this little word in the context of the scripture, we won't be led down these paths of these doctrines. So you see here on this chart, I've got the Greek and how the prepositions, the word pros, P-R-O-S, that's used here in John 1:1, it means towards or before in preference. And we have the definitions here, G4314, Thayer's, to the advantage of, right? And that comes from the word P-R-O, pro, which meaning before. So it's in preference, in before. I prefer this over that. And we see this in continuing on in John. Look at chapter 1 verses 15. Yahuchanan, John, bore witness of him and cried, saying, "This was he of whom I spoke. He that comes after me is preferred before me." So that's the Greek word emprosthen. So you see the word P-R-O-S is in this word. And he was before me, protos, before, protos. Now, I think most people know that the Messiah was born after John the Baptist. So is he saying he pre-existed before me? Well, no. He's just said he was preferred before him. So he has a preference. He is predetermined to be the Messiah before John ever came into existence. John 1:30 says, "This is he of whom I said, after me comes a man which is preferred before," same Greek word there, before me, "for he was before me," protos. So he's not saying that he existed before him, but that he was preferred before him. The Messiah is the steak and John is the fish, if you will. That preference of before John was the Messiah. So he was before him in preference, but not before him in time. And we know that the gospel records record this, that the Messiah was born after Yehukanon, after John the Baptist was. Let's look at some more examples here. Colossians 1:15, it says, "Who is the image of the invisible Elohim, the firstborn." There's a Greek word with the prefix pro, firstborn of every creature. Protokos, the firstborn of every creature. Pro, before. What was he? Is he the first Adam? No, Adam is the first Adam. He's the last Adam. Adam was the first man. So is Colossians 1:15 saying he pre-existed up in heaven with God, co-eternal, co-create? That's not what he's saying. Look at verse 18. "And he is the head of the body, the called out assembly, who is the beginning, the firstborn," what? "From the dead." That's right. He's the firstborn of all creation from the dead, that in all things he might have preeminence. There again is our pro word, proteo. So it's before. He had preeminence beforehand. He was chosen before the foundation of the world to fulfill this, to fulfill his role as Messiah. So he is the head of the body, the called out. And this word proteo is to be first, to hold first place. Strong says to be first in rank or influence, to have preeminence. So this isn't just Greg making this up. This isn't, this is Yah explaining to us that these particular words are used in a specific place for a specific reason, with specific meaning. But when we read something before, a lot of times we think of it from a linear perspective, that the Messiah was before John the Baptist. Well, that's a clear contradiction, because we know that he was born after. And so what is he talking about? Well, this is just the Greek word saying he had preeminence. He was chosen before the foundation of the world. Look at 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 2. "Elect according to" what? "Foreknowledge." So that word "for" and "pro" are similar. Foreknowledge, knowing beforehand. It's the Greek word prognosis, right? "Of Elohim the Father, through sanctification of the Ruach unto obedience, and sprinkling the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach. Grace unto you and peace be multiplied." So prognosis, foreknowledge, forethought, prearrangement. So whenever you see a word with pro in it, that's our indicator that it has a preference. Prognosis, what happens when you go to a doctor? He speaks forth your condition. He tells you, hey, you have such and such. You get a prognosis. This word prognosis is rooted in the word prognosko. So that's foreknowledge, to foreknow. Romans 8:29, "For whom he did foreknow, he also did predetermine." There's another word, pro-orizo, another word, pro, "to be conformed to the image of his Son." So he's talking about us. Elohim, whom he did foreknow, the Messiah, he also did predetermine to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn. What do we read in Colossians 5? "Firstborn of all creation, from the dead, among many brethren." So this foreknowledge, to know beforehand. The Word was with Elohim. Elohim had this Word, the redemption, the plan of redemption, in his foreknowledge, in his understanding, in his omniscience, that he knew who was going to do what, when, and where, John 1:1 says that the Word was with Yah. Doesn't mean that he was up there co-creating. Doesn't mean he was handing him the dust modulator and said, let's create together. No. The Word was with Yah in the beginning, and it was predetermined that he knew who his son would be and that he was going to give him preeminence over all creation. He would be the firstborn from among the dead to be risen into this new kingdom, the new heaven and earth. And he was chosen just like you and I are. Ephesians 1:5, it says, having predetermined, pro orizo, us unto the adoption of children by Yahushua HaMashiach to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. Verse 11, in whom also we have obtained an inheritance, being predetermined, pro orizo, according to the purpose of him who works all things after the counsel of his will. So just like the Messiah, we too were with the Father in the beginning. We are that Word manifest in the flesh. We are the body of Messiah. That doesn't mean that we pre-existed. Pre-incarnation is just reincarnation with a P, essentially. It's strange doctrines that don't need to be in our vernacular, right? Only we believers have been predetermined, just like the Son, and we have been chosen before the foundation of the world. We are the called out ones. We are his body. We are the church, the assembly. We are a body of believers endowed with power and have an expected inheritance. Yah has chosen us from the beginning of the world to be a part of this peculiar group of people. And that Word was in the beginning with the Father. That Word later became manifested in the flesh as Messiah, the Son. And from a corporal perspective, we are that body. We are that Son. We are the new man that was resurrected, that firstborn of all creation. With him we die. With him we are risen. We didn't pre-exist. We exist now in this time, and we have been called for this time period. So I pray that this teaching blessed you, and I hope that you give it a like, give it a share, and we'll see you on the next one. Shalom.